So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Over the past couple days, I updated my 11 Pro Max to 16.2. It's been out for a while. I know I'm a little bit late. Probably going to be on the next version soon. But I've been playing with this phone, checking it out, revisiting it, and kind of just thinking about it comparatively to my current daily driver iPhone 14 Pro Max for, my main iPhone SIM anyway. And I just want to talk about, is this phone still worth it here in 2023 like we did with the past couple of videos? Now, this phone right now does retail. Well, it doesn't really retail anymore. You got to buy it secondhand. Sometimes you can find a new one, but this phone definitely goes for around that 300-ish to 450 range. Could get close to 5 if you're getting a higher storage capacity. But when you compare that to when this phone was new, this phone launched at around $1,100, close to $1,500 if you did go with the all-out storage capacities. So you're essentially saving $1,000 off the original launch price of this phone. And what I've been really coming to the conclusion is that over time, these newer ones have been aging incredibly well. These newer iPhones, they just have extra features. They kind of remind me of like when car manufacturers will make a car that feels very similar for a long stretch of time. That's kind of what I'm feeling like with these newer iPhones when I go back to my 11 Pro Max. There's nothing about this phone that would kind of halt my everyday experience in terms of like slowing me down in day-to-day smartphone usage with this device right here. So let's talk about the design. So they are still rocking with a curved edge on this one. A lot of people did really prefer how this phone feels. And honestly, holding it again, I kind of miss how it feels. I definitely prefer the look of the squared edges, but in actual practicality, like holding it every day, it does feel a little bit less enjoyable to hold. It's just not as comfortable. I feel like this design right here is actually it's just better for the hand. It just feels like it was meant more for a human hand than squared, sharper edges. The back of this phone has that etched glass material, and the cameras, I know they're laughably small by today's standards, but when you compare this to like an SE camera or cameras from years ago, they're pretty big actually compared to older iPhones. So they're not horrible. I really feel like when I talk about the iPhone 11 Pro Max or even see it, I just feel like this was the start to, the newer iPhone line. And honestly, the iPhone 11 Pro Max was probably my favorite iPhone Max over the past 4 years. And that's because it was one that brought the biggest changes, I feel like, over its predecessor. It added an extra camera. The back design was different, super bright display. Then the 12 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max, and 14 Pro Max just added on top of that with some 5G, a camera here, a camera there. But, this really felt like a big upgrade from the iPhone XS Max in my experience. Now, in terms of the build design right now, so like how it feels in terms of durability, it's still built like a tank. You could see how thick that aluminum is on the edges there. This is the midnight green colorway, one of my favorites ever on an iPhone. Definitely beautiful. It's still a tank. You buy this phone now, as long as the person didn't beat it up, it's a tank. You got stainless steel around the edges. Overall, it just feels like it can hold up for another several years to come. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these phones could last another 5 to 10 years, not software wise, but they'll be fine. Now, when it comes to the display quality on this phone, you're also looking at a 6.5. So yes, they did increase the display size a little bit on iPhone, but this is when they really started cranking up that brightness to levels where I was like getting blinded at night. This was the 800 nits here. They went to 1,000 on, I believe it was the 12 Pro Max. Maybe it was a 13. Actually, it was 13 Pro Max. They upped it again on the 14 Pro Max, and now I have to use reduced white point because it's incredibly, bright. That's good for sunlight, but indoors, not really needed. Honestly, the 11 Pro Max's display, it's big enough. I don't really like the notch design on this one. It's a little bit too long for me, but it's not like I love Dynamic Island or I love the notch design on the 13 Pro Max. I kind of just want an all-screen iPhone. That's what I've been dreaming about forever. But honestly, using this is not really different than using a 14 Plus, using a 14 in 2023. The actual display quality is still tack sharp. It's no 4K panel, it's no 2K panel. It's probably not going to beat the best Samsung displays out there, but it is Samsung made, and it's still a very well-tuned, accurate color display. Got a very natural look. So using this actually feels just about as high end as using what I'm paying over $1,000 for right now for a newer phone, which means if you cop this thing for $200-300 on a deal, or even $350, you're getting the experience somebody who's paying, $1,200 is getting on a display panel. That's insane value if you ask me. So waiting it out to buy an iPhone might be the better option than buying them when they first come out, to be quite honest with you. But that doesn't seem to slow people down. They want the latest and greatest when it's brand new. Yes, I just repeated myself twice because I wanted to drive that point home. People don't care. Some people just want it when it's brand new. Overall though, 60 hertz, display, not the smoothest compared to a 120 hertz, but because iOS is butter pretty much on all iPhones, you don't really think about it much unless you're comparing it over to, a side by side with a display like a 120 hertz 14, 13 Pro, things like that. But I do believe they're going to start bringing ProMotion even down to the base models next year. Now, moving over to software, like I said, I just got this thing updated. I get a little bit behind on some of the older phones when it comes to my updates. But, running this on 16.2, I can tell you that the battery doesn't, drain as slow as it used to, meaning it's going down a little faster than I like. But at the same time, it's still a full day phone, and maybe then some for people who are not heavy users. But see, that's the thing. The newer iPhones, heavy users can go a whole day and then some. These older ones, you gotta, if you're buying a used one with these newer updates, they don't kind of last like when they first came out, but they still can make it pretty decent in terms of that battery life. Now, the software, like I say, the experience, again, because Apple is really dedicated to their product, they continue to provide you with support, and that makes this a great value. The only difference here is that in the camera, you're not going to have the action mode. Some of the features aren't exactly the same as the current camera setup. I mean, look at the difference. They got to add something to make it feel like a different phone, or else nobody would upgrade. But definitely that's about the only area on software you're going to really notice. You still app library, widgets, all these software support. And the thing about this performance is because of the Apple A13 Bionic chip, Apple's been overpowering these chips for so long that even the 11 Pro Max now can essentially use every app on the store with no problem. So again, I feel like all I'm really paying for here with these newer iPhones is better cameras, which is important. They are getting closer to getting up there with like mirrorless cameras. There's always going to be the sensor limitations, making those not as sharp on the zoom in, but when you just kind of compare a base photo, they're getting pretty close to mirrorless cameras. This one still a little bit behind that. So you are sacrificing camera, but man, I got to tell you, I just imagine how good the 14 Pro Max is going to be when that's just a couple years old and you could cop that thing for $400. I mean, why would you even buy a budget phone? You could just buy a couple years old iPhone and get almost a premium $1,000 like experience. It's just kind of silly to buy a cheap underpriced phone when you could just go to third party. So I kind of like that, to recommend that. Now, when it comes to the actual, battery life, we spoke on it a little bit. Overall, I would recommend, if you're looking at one of these now, to go ahead and ask the seller where the capacity is at, because the 11 Pro Max for me was one of those phones that the capacity was going down a little faster than I liked. So don't buy one of these if they're like lower than 80%. Even in the 80s, I would be a little bit cautious. I want to see them in the 90s before recommending them to pick it up. But again, this is pretty much a full day phone. It does have wireless charging. It could charge a little bit quicker than some of the older iPhones, but it's not a super fast charging phone. Lightning to USB is how you throw down with this one. You're not getting USB-C. That's going to be one of the big deals this year when we cover the iPhone 15 series. And audio quality on here was also very good for the time. I really like how Apple does have attention to detail on their speakers on all the iPhones. It's really nicely precise down here. And up here, it does come out of here as well. Speakerphones are fine, things like that. One area where I would mention that it's not really up to par with the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the phone call quality and just the overall reception. I find the 5G to be so much better on the 14 Pro Max. So If you're somebody who cares a lot about their mobile data, mobile performance, and I'm not saying this doesn't work, it's just going to run on the older 4G LTE technology, which is not slow at all. 5G is just way faster. And you don't live in like by a major city or anything like that, this is probably not the best option. But if that's not really a problem for you, this is going to be pretty awesome still. So in conclusion, wrapping it up, you could get this in a few different colors. This one, you can get it in silver, gold, and I think they had a graphite colorway for this one as well. This phone is still awesome. I pick it up and I'm like, man, the 14 Pro Max is cool, but this is like literally just the same thing with a curved side and a smaller camera housing. Now, a lot of people are gonna disagree and be like, no, look at all the new features. I get it, they're better. But I mean, it's like I say, when my comparison to used cars or whatever, just look at like a new car and look at a 3-year-old model of that same model, it's going to be quite similar. That's kind of like what this feels like right here with this phone. So I would definitely recommend it for a couple of people. One, you don't care about 5G just yet. Two, these newer iPhones out of your price range, and you're not going to go on a carrier payment plan. That's not how you roll. You just want to buy this thing outright. You just want to try iPhone and you want to try a Max. Another person, like I recommend my past video, you lost, broke, or somebody unfortunately took your phone and you just need something to hold you over. This thing is going to be more than capable. So yeah, 11 Pro Max is so good still here in 2023. That's how I feel about it right now. And even a better option than something like an 11, a regular 11, or even, some of the smaller phones, because you get some of the premium stuff here, like triple camera, the bigger, brighter OLED display, the longer battery life. You're getting a lot of those higher end features at a lower price. So this is an awesome pickup here, especially if you're that person who can really benefit from it. So if you have the 11 Pro Max or you had one, share your experience. Maybe you jumped to a newer iPhone and you said, man, I miss my 11 Pro Max. Let me know how you feel about this phone right now. Or if you just think it's time to say goodbye, that phone is old, forget that dinosaur. Let me know your thoughts about it down below. I'll catch you on the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well. And I should be covering this later this year at its 4-year annual mark. So stay tuned for that. I'll catch you all in the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.